Hello, welcome back. It's The Merchant of Venice, Act 4, Scene 1. In the last act, we had Bassanio correctly choosing the casket to win Portia's hand in marriage. And when they were finalizing that, Bassanio got a ring from Portia, promised never to lose it. And we had a letter from Antonio. The letter said that Antonio was broke, all of his ships miscarried. He is forfeit on his loan from Shylock, and so Shylock is able to collect the bond, which is the pound of flesh, and Antonio asked Bassanio to come see him in that final hour when Shylock goes to cut off that pound of flesh. That's where we are at right now. This is it. This is the trial. My favorite trial scene in all of literature, and it's here for the Duke to decide what's going to happen. Let's get into it. In this scene, the scene of the play, right? This play is called The Merchant of Venice. The title character, Antonio, he's the merchant. This is his plot line, and it's going to end one way or another. We are either going to see him lose a pound of flesh or not. So this is his play. This is the most important plot line in the whole thing. So this plot line is going to get resolved. We are on a trial. So this whole thing's, the Duke is the head judge. What he says goes. He is the leader of the community. He's in charge of the whole city. And what he says goes. And he's there and he's asking for introductions. Shylock announces his intentions. We have an offer of compensation for him. We have the lawyer show up. And surprise, surprise, who is the lawyer? It's Portia. Holy cow. She dressed up like a man, and she's going to run this show. We have some sentiments with her and Shylock and Antonio before the trial begins. Then we have the trial, the questioning, looking at documents, and then we have the judgment. Okay, what side is the court going to judge on? Is the court's going to say that it's wrong to kill Antonio, don't do it? Or is it going to be say, this is the legal contract, we have to go by it? So we have this big outcome that we're going to do. And then we have payment. Payment has to be made to lawyers and stuff, and the rings come into play. Shakespeare, whenever he has something where somebody says, take this, don't ever lose it, you know they're going to lose it, especially in Shakespeare. This is big. So we see the rings coming up again. And we have this crazy big theme of mercy in this play. And it really shines in this act. And we'll talk about that. I'll talk about all the mentions of mercy here in a bit. So let's look at the start of the trial. And we have the introductions. The Duke greets Antonio. Right off the start, the Duke says, what, is Antonio here? And Antonio's like, ready, here I am. And the first thing the Duke does is he apologizes to Antonio. Right? I'm sorry for you that you have to come answer to a stony adversary. I'm sorry that you have to be here because of Shylock. The Duke treats him with politeness. And then the Duke greets Shylock. And it's kind of different. He's standing out in the wings, or he's not there yet. And the Duke's like, go one and call the Jew into court. So everybody's there ready. And they need to bring Shylock in. And enter Shylock. And the Duke says, make room and let him stand before our face. Usually what happens is people are there and they get in his way. And they block him and they make faces and they jab him some. And they treat him very poorly. Okay, and the Duke's like, just make room, let him come up here. So people are being rude to Shylock, and then the Duke basically says, you know what? I agree, and everyone else agrees that you're going to drop this suit in the last minute. You're just going to go right up to the end, and you're going to say, oh, I'm not really going to take up pound of flesh. Ha, 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 psych. And then the Duke just asks him, will you drop this suit? We await your gentle answer. It's a nice little pun on that word, Gentile, right? Someone who is not a Jew. So I expect this non-Jewish answer from him. And After that, we find out Shylocks' intentions. He says he swore an oath in his synagogue that he is going to have his bond. He has swore to God that he's going to cut off a pound of this flesh. And he points out that if you, the Duke, do not allow me, Shylock, to cut off this pound of flesh, then this city is going to go bankrupt because no one else in the world will come here because the contracts can all be broken, right? Venice will fall. One of the things that makes Venice such a great city in the world during this time period is because of its laws on trade. People from all over the world came to Venice, and they made these contracts to buy and sell things, and once that contract was set, you didn't change it. You couldn't wiggle your way out of things. And that was the law, basically, and you cannot break that charter. Shylock goes on to kind of explain himself that when they ask why would he want the pound of flesh, it's not any good. Just take money. He says, I don't have to answer it. Right? It's mine. It's my pound of flesh. I can do what I want with it. And he gives some great examples. Shylock says, a weight of carried fresh to receive 3,000 ducats. Why should I answer why I want this instead? No, it's mine. If you have a house with a rat and you pay someone 10,000 ducats to have this rat gotten rid of, it's your money. Do what you want with it. You can't tell anybody else what to do with their stuff. So he doesn't have to explain. Shylock wants the full exactness of the law. The law is he can cut off a pound of flesh because they both signed that contract. You can't look at the contract and say this is a right or wrong contract. Once it's signed, it's signed. We don't have those kind of laws here, right? If it's an illegal contract, then it won't stand up in court. This is a court. The contract was signed, and so that's where we're at. This pound of flesh is Shylock's to do what he wants with. He can even use it to bait fish, right? To go fishing. People are offended at times, right? People cannot change what offends them. So why should they try to stop him from doing anything with this pound of flesh? And Bassanio starts arguing with him, right? Bassanio says, this is not an answer. You're not an unfeeling person, right? The excuse to the current of thy cruelty. You're just being cruel. And Shylock's like, I don't have to give you an answer that you like, which he doesn't. Bassanio then asks an interesting question. Do all men kill the things they do not love? Wow. Shylock obviously doesn't love Bassanio. Shylock obviously hates Antonio, right? So Bassanio just asks him, are you going to kill things that you don't like? And Shylock answers him with a question. Hate any man the thing that he would not kill. Just because I don't want to kill you doesn't mean I hate you. It's an interesting twist there. And Bassanio doesn't really have an answer for that. Every offense is not a hate, and Bassanio is done. And Antonio says, do not argue with Shylock. He is as unchangeable as a force of nature. Just stop arguing. Put yourself in Antonio's position. He knows he's going to lose. He knows he signed this contract. He knows he's been a jerk with a capital J to Shylock his whole life, right? Been making fun of him, spitting on him, calling him names, messing up his business deals. I mean, Antonio's not a good person. And he knows this is Shylock's chance to get even. And he's done for, and he's tired of all the arguing. He just wants to get it over with. And then Antonio says, let me have judgment, and the Jew his will. Let's just get this over with. And Shylock is offered compensation. Bassanio offers him 6,000 gold ducats. That's twice what it was, instead of this pound of flesh. And Shylock says no. And he said, you know what? If each of those ducats was in 6 parts, and each one of those parts was a whole ducat, I still don't want it. Shylock would give up 36,000 gold ducats for the chance to kill Antonio here. He's not going to accept it. And we get this great analogy from Shylock. Okay? You know, what does he want to do with this pound of flesh? It's mine. I can do what I want with it. He doesn't have to listen to anyone else. And Shylock goes on to talk about, you ask me why I would rather have a weight of carrying flesh than to receive it, than to receive 3,000 ducats. I'll not answer. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Ah, there we go. You have among you many a purchased slave. Slavery was legal, right? People could have slaves, and many people in this court have slaves, which, like your asses and your dogs and your mules, you use in abject and in slavish parts because you bought them. You use these slaves because they're yours. You bought them. Right? You would use them just like you would a horse or a mule or something. What if I say to you, let those slaves be free. Marry those slaves to your heirs. Why should they sweat under their burdens? Let their beds be soft as yours. Right? Let their palates be seasoned with good foods. What if I said that? Free your slaves. Give them good beds and good food to eat. Marry them to your children. What would you say? And Shylock says, your answer would be, the slaves are ours. Well, that's Shylock's answer. That pound of flesh, it's mine. I'll do what I want with it. You can't tell people what to do with stuff that is theirs. Right? That is freedom with a capital F right there. And Shylock uses that slave analogy. So that pound of flesh is his property. He's going to take it. No legal force can stop Shylock from taking this bond, anyone's judgment. He says that there's no force in the decree of Venice. I stand for judgment. Shall I have it? And the Duke says, upon my power, I might dismiss this court. I just might throw it out. Last time I saw this play, the character who played Shylock just rolled his eyes and was like, all right, go ahead, you're in for it. But he doesn't. And instead, we introduce the lawyer that's going to proceed in this case. So we have a messenger from Bellario, and this person delivering the message is Portia, who is dressed up like a man. And here's Portia dressed like a man to become the main lawyer in this case. She is going to set the rule of law, and what she says goes. She now will be more powerful than the Duke. This woman is gonna be strong, right? The Duke hands over power to Portia. So does Shylock, and so does Antonio. They all agree to abide by what this learned doctor says. Okay? So everyone agrees to it. It's like the Judge Judy thing. Everybody comes into the show and agrees to listen to what she says. Portia's like a better Judge Judy, if you wish. Which is interesting. Shakespeare has strong, powerful women in his plays. Lady Hamlet, Catherine, Cleopatra, ruler of an entire country. Juliet, believe it or not, even though she was kind of a whiny crybaby and killed herself, was still a powerful girl setting her own path. Viola, Desdemona, all of these people are powerful and have set their own way in these plays. Shakespeare might have been a early feminist, right? With these strong female characters showing us that they can be sometimes stronger and smarter than men. Okay. So driving on, she's going to handle the trial. And one of the first things she does is offer Shylock mercy. Right? Extend some mercy. Give Shylock the chance to show some mercy. And we will see her exacting punishment also later on. So, before the trial even starts, Bassanio offers up his flesh. Right? I wish you could have my flesh, my blood, my bones, all before you lose one drop of blood. It's nice of Bassanio to offer up his flesh. It was all for him. And here he's like, oh, I wish I could do this for you. Antonio's ready to die. He just wants Bassanio to write about his life. Right? Write my epitaph. So that's kind of nice. Write good things about me. Remember me. And usually Shylock is seen there sharpening a knife. He's got a leather strap and he's sharpening the knife, and he doesn't care what's going on. Gratiano is rude to him. Shylock doesn't care. He only cares about that pound of flesh that he's going to get. So we get the letter from Bellario, which is read. And this letter says that Bellario is not well. And here's a doctor from Rome, really from Belmont, but from Rome. And this person knows all about the case. This person can do the case in my stead. So they let her do it. So we start the trial. And the first thing that happens in any trial is you identify the people involved, right? You've probably seen it in movies. Can you identify the person who shot you? Yes, it's that person right there. We always identify the plaintiff or the defendant, and Portia does this. I'm informed of the case, and she steps up. Your name is Shylock, and he's like, yep, Shylock is my name. So she finds out who's who. You're the merchant, you're Shylock, you're the Jew. And she tells Shylock to be merciful. Be merciful. Don't do this. Right? So this is part of the trial. She asked Antonio, you're Antonio, do you confess a bond? In other words, do you really owe this guy a pound of flesh? And Antonio's like, yes, I do. And Shylock is told to be merciful. She says, then must the Jew be merciful? And Shylock's like, on what compulsion must I? Tell me that. On what compulsion? Why must I be forced to show mercy? Why must I be forced to be nice? And then Portia comes up with this speech that is amazing. It's at the bottom of page 68 in your book. I'm going to read this thing to you. She, on what compulsion do I have to be merciful? She says this: the quality of mercy is not strained. It's not strained, right? The quality of mercy isn't something you have to be forced into doing, right? You just do it. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. Mercy comes down from heaven. It's good. It's gentle, right? A gentle rain falling is good. It is twice blessed. So mercy isn't just good, it's twice as good. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. So it helps everyone involved. If you are merciful, it helps the person who gives the mercy, and it helps the person who receives the mercy. This is great stuff. And then she goes on to say, it is mightiest in the mightiest. Mercy is even better when bigger people do it. When you are the most powerful, when you're the one in charge being merciful, it's even better. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. It makes that king who is merciful better than his authoritative rule. It's better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. Right? The king has a scepter that has that fear and dread, but this mercy is better than his crown, which makes the king great. But mercy is above this sceptered sway. It is stronger than the force and might of a king. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings, and it is an attribute to God himself. Mercy is great. Okay? Love this speech. And earthly power doth then show likest God, when mercy seasons justice. The person giving mercy is as strong as God, right? Instead of giving that justice, you're kind to someone. You're like God. So that's why you should be merciful. Remember that. Okay? Read that speech again. Okay? Look it over. Go it over slow and think about this. Okay. And after she says this, well, let me read just a little bit more here. I spoke thus much to mitigate thy justice of thy plea. I've said all this so you can lessen your punishment. Which if thou strict court of Venice, must needs give sentence against this merchant there. So this court probably will have to let you cut off this pound of flesh, but be merciful. Don't do it. And Shylock's like, my deeds upon my head, I crave the law, the penalty, and the forfeit of my bond. That's all I want, right? He's sworn an oath. He's not going to back down. This is what he wants. Bassanio offers to pay the price of the contract 10 times over, which is kind of funny. Shylock just refused 6,000 from Bassanio. And then he said he wouldn't take 36,000. Well, Bassanio now is offering 30,000, 60,000. He's offering 10 times over. But this is not his money. This is his wife's money, right? Portia's money. And he says an interesting statement. And he says this to Portia. We found out that we are going to allow Shylock to cut a pound of flesh. And Bassanio says to Portia, do a great right by doing a little wrong. Wow. Do something that is really, really right just by bending the rules a bit. And she says, no power can alter a decree established. Right? We cannot break the law. We cannot break a contract here. And Shylock uses an interesting phrase that we hear over and over. He says, a Daniel come to judgment. Yea, a Daniel. And at the bottom of page 70, there are some little notes about the Daniel illusion and the history of Susanna. It's kind of interesting. But Daniel's this great judge. And Portia wants to look at the bond. Let me see the contract. And she reads it. And as she's reading this, she has a little aside with Shylock again. She says, Shylock, there's thrice the money offered thee. Right? Take this money. So she's reading this. She's telling Shylock, just take the money. Again, she offers him a chance to be merciful and to take 3 times the amount of money here. And Shylock says, no, I've made an oath in heaven. I cannot perjure my soul. He's only going to take the pound of flesh. And then as soon as he says that, Portia Ends the trial. She makes the judgment. Why? This bond is forfeit, which means that Antonio could not pay back Shylock, and so he has to pay the penalty of that bond, which is that pound of flesh. Usually it's interest, usually it's something, but here it's a pound of flesh. So now we have the judgment. It is due. And then Portia spells it out. Shylock gets to cut off a pound of flesh, nearest to the heart. And she asks, do you have scales to weigh a pound? Shylock's got the scales there, ready to go. And then she says, have you some surgeon, Shylock, on your charge to stop his wounds, lest he bleed to death? Do you have a surgeon nearby to help him out after you've cut him? And Shylock's like, no, it's not the bond. He's going to go by the letter of the law. That's it. He's only going to operate under the law. So then Portia asks Antonio, do you have any last words? And his last words can be summarized as he's ready to die. He tells Bassanio to tell your wife about me. She's right there. So she can see how he's acting. And then he goes on to say, tell your wife, say how I loved you, speak fair me in death. Tell your wife about our love. So I'd mentioned before about these homoerotic ideas in here. And some people focus on that. I don't think it's there. And then he tells Bassanio, it's okay that I'm going to die paying for your debt. Because remember, he borrowed this money for Bassanio to go get his wife. And Bassanio replies back to Antonio, and he said, I married a wife which is dear to me as life itself, but life itself, my wife, and all the world are not esteemed above your life. Right? My wife, my life, everything I love in the world is not as good as you. Nothing is as important as your life. That's what he tells to Antonio. Guess who heard this? Portia heard this, right? This lawyer, and Portia called him out on it, right? It's good that you say this behind her back. And then Gratiano goes off to say, how did Portia say it? Your wife would give you little thanks for that if she were by, to take offense. So, and then Gratiano says, I have a wife, whom I protest I love. I were she were in heaven. I were she were in heaven. I wish she were in heaven. I wish my wife is in heaven. He wishes his wife was dead. Then let me read on. Would she were in heaven, so she could entreat some power to change this cursed Jew. I wish my wife was dead, so she could be in heaven to, talk to the saints and God into helping out here. And Nerissa calls him out on that, of course. She's like, oh, that's well, you offer that behind her back, or else this could be a disquiet house. There might be a lot of arguing going on. And then Shylock mentions his daughter, right? These be Christian husbands. I have a daughter who ran away with a Christian. And then he snaps out of it and he's like, we're wasting time. We trifle time. I pursue the sentence. Or I pray thee, pursue the sentence. So Shylock wants the sentence. He wants to be able to cut off that pound of flesh. So we now have the outcome. The outcome is Shylock can cut off a pound of flesh as long as he has the scales to weigh them. And then Portia starts putting out other things. A pound of flesh is that of that merchant is thine. Court awards it. The law doth grant it. Shylock's, yep, most rightful judge. Then Portia says you have to cut it off from the breast. Law allows it. Court awards it. It's the letter of the law here. Shylock's like, yep, most learned judge. And then Portia says, tarry a little bit. There's something else. The bond doesn't give any note or jot of blood. The words expressly are a pound of flesh. So, take thy pound of flesh. But in cutting it, if you drop one drop of Christian blood, your lands and goods are by laws of Venice confiscate unto the Venice. The contract doesn't say anything about blood. There's another law in Venice, though. If you harm a Christian, if you shed a Christian's blood, murder someone, then all of your lands are confiscated, all your homes are confiscated, and it goes to Venice. And then we have Gratiano saying, oh, Daniel, this is good. Shylock cannot cut this pound of flesh without dropping blood. And Shylock is like, whoa, is that the law? And Portia's like, yep, thyself shall see the act. You wanted justice, and now be assured you shall have justice more than you wanted. You shall have justice more than you desired. You wanted justice. You wanted the letter of the law. You're going to get it more than you wanted. So Shylock then says, all right, fine. I'll just take 3 times the bond, which was offered him. Right? So we're looking at 9,000 gold ducats. And Bassanio's here, have the money. And Portia's like, no. The Jew shall have all justice. And that justice is nothing but the penalty. He shall not have any money back. He will only have that pound of flesh. That's it. We have Gratiano saying, oh, rightful judge, what a Daniel. So Portia tells him, cut off that pound of flesh. Go ahead. But if it's more than a pound or less than a pound, or if there's 1 drop of blood, you lose everything. It goes to the state. And Shylock's, I can't do this. Just give me my principal. Just give me the 3,000 back and I'll be done. And Portia says, no. You can only have that pound of flesh. Go ahead and do it. Don't drop any blood. And Shylock's like, well, he can keep that pound of flesh. And then the devil give him the good of it. I'll stay no longer to question. I'll just go ahead and leave. This trial's done. I won't cut him. I won't kill him. I won't take my money back. I'll just leave. Shylock is defeated. He gives up. And as he's getting ready to turn around and leave, Portia says, tarry, Jew. Hold on. Stop there. You can't leave yet. We are not done here. The law has yet another hold on you. So there is yet another law that is broken. It is enacted in the laws of Venice if it proved against an alien that by direct or indirect attempts he seek the life of any citizen. An alien. That's someone not a Christian, right? The Jews would be an alien to that part. Someone from outside of the community. I'll talk about the Shakespeare idea of comedy later, but a lot of it has to do with community. Shylock is outside of the community. So, if an alien by direct or indirect attempts seek the life of a citizen, the party against which he doth contrive shall seize 1/2 of his goods, and the other goods can come to the privy coffer of the state. So, Shylock was going to kill Antonio. Shylock is an outsider. Antonio is a Christian. Because of this law, all of Shylock's money can go to Antonio, and Antonio can give half of it to the state and keep the other half for himself. So Shylock's money now has to go to his enemy. Wow. And the other half can go to the state. Half of it goes to Antonio. And the outsider's life is forfeit. And only so he can be executed. And the offender's life lies at the mercy of the Duke only against other voice. So that offender, Shylock, can be executed. But he has to beg mercy of the Duke. So now Shylock is in the position to have to receive mercy or die. Tables have turned here. Okay? And before the Duke listens to Shylock, before Shylock can say anything, the Duke says, "Thou shalt see the difference of our spirits. I pardon thy life. before you ask for it. I will show you mercy. Your life, I won't kill you. Your life is yours. Okay? And then he goes on to say, for half thy wealth is Antonio's, the other half comes to the general state, which humbleness may drive into a fine. And Portia's like, no, it's not really that way in the law. And Shylock begs here, is like, take my life. Okay, don't take my possessions. Because you do that, right? He lends his money out and he gets interest on it, and that's his livelihood. If you take that, he doesn't have any livelihood anymore. So Shylock doesn't want to lose his money. He would rather die. So Antonio says, you know what? He doesn't want half the money. Half the money will go into a trust fund that will be given to Lorenzo and Jessica when Shylock dies. So we'll put this money into a trust fund and give it to your Christian son-in-law, right? And then the other half, because it's up to Antonio, the other half doesn't have to go to the state. The other half can be kept by Shylock if two things happen. He becomes a Christian, and he wills everything he owns to Lorenzo and Jessica in his death. Wow. This came out of left field. But now, no longer is he going to have his monies. He can have some, but he's got to become a Christian. And this is the Shakespearean idea of being outside of a community, being drawn into a community. And this is a problem comedy. That's a funny thing in Shakespeare's time. Here's someone who's on the outs, no one likes, something happens, and they get accepted. Well, here's this Jewish person no one likes, he becomes a Christian. And sometimes when this play is done, the person is thrust to his knees, you have to become a Christian, they give him a cross, he kisses it, he stands up, and everybody cheers. That's not the way it's really going to happen. I'm going to put a link to the movie that you can watch on this. And the way Shylock endures this humiliation is really touching. Okay, so pay attention to this whole scene when you watch it later. And he's content in this. So Shylock becomes a Christian, and he makes a will out that everything he owns will go to his Christian daughter and son-in-law. So that's the end of the trial, and everyone goes their own separate ways, and the Duke is impressed by this lawyer, Portia, who came up with this crazy solution that makes everybody happy, at least all the Christians happy. Shylock loses big time. He loses everything in this play. He's lost his daughter. He's lost his money. He's lost his religion. He's lost his livelihood. Shylock loses big in this play, right? And the only reason it happens to him is because of this anti-Semitism going on. It's pretty wretched. And Portia pulled it off, and everyone thinks she's awesome for it. And the Duke wants her to come to dinner. And she's like, no, I've got to leave. Well, the Duke's like, well, you did great. We'll see you later. And we have Bassanio offering to pay Portia 3,000 gold. Here's the gold that was going to go back to Shylock. Here, you can have the principal from that loan that started all this mess as your payment. And Portia says something. He is well paid, that is well satisfied. Right? The only reward you need for a job well done is to have done it. Right? I'm satisfied if I've done well, I've made someone happy. And Bassanio begs Portia, please take some reward of us. And Portia's like, all right, I'll take your gloves. So she takes Antonio's gloves and puts them on. And then she tells Bassanio, ooh, I'll have that ring. That ring that he promised he would never part with, right? And Portia made him promise this. And here's Portia tempting him to give up that ring. Bassanio calls it a trifle, offers to buy any other ring. He explains that his wife told him to keep it. And Portia's like, oh yeah, I'm sure all sorts of men say that and stuff. But he doesn't give it to her, and she goes to leave. Antonio says, give her the ring, right? It's okay. It's just a ring. She'll know it's for a good cause. And Bassanio listens to Antonio, right? So he put Antonio's advice, give this doctor the ring, more than Portia's advice, keep this ring. So that's interesting. So he gives the ring to Gratiano, says, go give it to that doctor. So Gratiano, that's the next scene. So that's what we've got going on here. This mercy is such a big part of this whole play, and it really comes out in this scene. It's mentioned at the start that Shylock had no mercy. The Duke asked for mercy. How shall you hope for mercy when you give none? And Shylock replied that, what judgment should I fear having done nothing wrong? Wow, why should I be good to someone when I don't have to be? Right? I'm not afraid of anything. I haven't done anything wrong. Later on, Portia offers Shylock to take the money instead of the bond to be merciful. We had that whole wonderful speech. Mercy is twice blessed. Right? Read that again. We have Portia again telling Shylock to be merciful as she announces the judgment. The Duke shows mercy on Shylock by sparing his life. Antonio showed mercy to Shylock by letting Shylock keep half his money. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot going on in the scene. 3 days I'm giving you to go over this scene again. Pay attention to what Portia says about mercy. And in this scene, Shylock's revenge is gone, right? Antonio's bond, it's all done with. Lorenzo and Jessica are mentioned. They're going to be in Shylock's will. And the rings now are on the forefront. Bassanio sent his ring with a messenger to give to Portia. So what's going to happen with these two? Reread this. Look at your study guides. Go over these notes. Enjoy this as much as I do.